Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Underwater Photography Show. I'm Matthew Sullivan.
And I'm Alex Mustard.
And a few weeks ago, as of the time you're watching this, we put out an episode where Alex went on a bit of a rant about photo competitions.
I think my face was very red in that episode.
Yes. So we decided that we would flip the script a little bit, and Alex is going to talk about the positives of running a photo contest, why you would want to do it, and the benefits that come along with that. So perhaps still a rant, but on a more positive note this time.
Well, I ran to the. No, I felt it was kind of that episode. Because it kind of touched an issue that had long frustrated me. I think we were quite negative, or I was quite negative towards photo competitions, and I don't think that necessarily represents my entire feeling on the subject. I think that photo competitions are a very valuable and enjoyable part of what our community likes, and I think they're quite an easy target as well. And so I guess what I wanted to do was to sort of talk a little bit about why I run a photo competition, but why people are drawn to run them. And I think there's a underlying feeling that people are running them to rake in money. And I think that is a big misconception. I think, first of all, people overestimate how many entries competitions get. We've always been really open at UPY about how many pictures we get. Almost none of the other contests will tell you, because actually it rather undervalues their winners to say, well, actually, we only got a few hundred pictures.
Yeah.
And so, UPY gets a lot, partly because of the prestige, but partly because it is quite a bit cheaper than a lot of the other competitions out there. I think the other competitions, people kind of pick their 2 or 3 pictures, whereas they might put 20 in UPY. So, maybe you should start by at least dividing the UPY numbers by about 5 as a good estimate for what other competitions are getting. It would be my recommendation, based on my experience judging them, and sort of what I know from speaking to people involved about what sort of numbers most of the other competitions are getting. And therefore, when you start multiplying up their earnings, don't just take the UPY number and go, well, some competitions are charging €10 an entry or $10 an entry, therefore we'll take the 6,000 pictures UPY got and they got $60,000. Wow, they must be, it's not those sort of numbers. I think that people are motivated to run these competitions because they feel that they're a valuable part of our community. And I think that they want to provide a platform to inspire other photographers to see inspirational images themselves and to headlight, to shine a light, to put a spotlight on those inspirational images. And of course, I think that the community, people, as they progress through photography, they're desperate for feedback that they're doing a good job. And I think everyone is very aware that social media in particular is a very bad gauge of how good your photography is. The pictures that do well on social media can be a very specific type of picture. But more than that, it's more the people that do well in social media determine how many likes a picture get. If you put lots of time into your social media and you reply to every comment and you're out there commenting on everyone else's pictures all the time, the social media algorithms like that. If you're a photographer who looks good in a bikini, the social media algorithm, or to be honest, the other people on social media like that. Or whatever it is, but I'm not, joking aside, there are lots of factors that go into popularity on social media, and I think that can be great if you're getting all the likes, and it can be very frustrating if you're not getting all the likes. And that's where competitions, while they are subjective, they offer a much more objective measure of your progress than simply how big a following you've got on one particular social media channel, and therefore how many likes your average pictures get. And so I think a lot of photographers are out there going, well, actually, my stuff I think is better than that photographer's, but they seem to be doing really well on social media. No one seems to be paying attention to my work, but we both went in for the same competition, and my stuff, did really well. And so I feel like, and so I think competitions are perhaps even more important than ever because of that people feeling there's a need for having a more objective measure of their progress. And of course, competing against yourself over time, as you hopefully slowly get better and better results year on year, is also a great track of how your own underwater photography is improving. And by regularly entering competitions, I think you become a kind of a match fit game fit photographer ready to ready to really have your skills out there and ready to be seen. So I think that people organize competitions because they're valued by the community, although they are an easy target to criticize, as I indeed was doing just the other day. But I do think that most people are motivated by the right things, and the idea that these people are doing it to rake it in really, I think, is misplaced.
I would say from the outside perspective, this is personally, I've never once considered the fact that people would be running competitions just to make money off them. Mm-hmm. Obviously, there's money changing hands, so it's a consideration. It's not one that I've never had that consideration. I think like you said, it's beneficial to the community because not only do you get a gauge of how your images compare to, everybody else's, or at least everybody else who entered, but if and when you place, it feels good, it feels nice, but it can also get your name out there and lead to some other cool opportunities, which I think is what a lot of people are potentially after. And I know some people who have done, really well in big competitions, and it can, it probably doesn't change their life the way it could have maybe 10 or 15 years ago. But it can make a significant difference in your path as a photographer.
Absolutely. And I would say that's true in my career as well. It was certainly big photographic results, led to, offers of books, offers of work, or so without a doubt, competition results changed my career trajectory on multiple occasions, always for the positive. So
so I think they're important from that aspect as well. One thing that I think a lot of, and one of the negatives that I think I see about competitions is that you end up seeing people who shoot just for the competition or just for competitions, and kind of lose a bit of the passion for what they're actually, for the photography and the subjects and things like that, which I think is, and I don't know if that's necessarily if that's because of the competitions or if that's just how brains are wired that they lean that way. But that's one thing that I think isn't my favorite thing about competitions, but I think that that's not an indictment of competitions as much as personalities. So and that's something I've had to go through too, where I would there's a period where I was like, I need to just shoot things that are going to do well in competition, and it definitely sucked a little bit of the enjoyment out of photographic outings for me. So I think now what I've started to do is I just go out and enjoy myself, and then if I happen to have images that I think will do well in competition, then you enter them, and that's a nice little bonus if you're able to be awarded somehow.
I think as long as you've got that motivation within yourself to want to create really memorable shots, then you've got everything you need. I think sometimes it can be a really valuable focus for photographers to have that competition drive. No, I think I was going to circle back a bit towards that. You're talking about the kudos and the career-changing possibilities of wins. I would say that it's important, therefore, to choose competitions. I think there are competitions out there that are ideal for winning prizes, and some photographers are like, well, I have no ambitions to have a reputation, but or a career. But actually, what I would like is to have big chunks of my travel each year paid for by winning prizes. And actually that's if you're a good photographer, that's a relatively easy thing to do with the number of underwater photography competitions there are. There's usually a good one each month that's got multiple travel prizes. And, some of these are, not so competitive. So I think if you've got good stuff, you can usually win enough travel prizes to help offset some of your travel costs. I think it's important to note that a lot of the packages aren't necessarily, they're very rarely for 2 divers. They're very rarely for more than a week. So you often need to win quite a few packages to really cover a trip. And they don't include flights as well. So you still have quite a lot of costs involved. And usually, so it's not, but of course, every photographer who wins gets to tell everyone on the boat, oh yeah, I won this trip, in a contest, not revealing that they only won one night.
So that is assuming, like you said, that you can actually afford to still go on them. Because they're and one thing
this is the positive competition.
There are competitions that will allow you to choose prizes, one thing I would suggest, having gone through this myself, is to consider the fact that you have to get to these places and that is not covered. So don't choose places you can't afford to get to, because I've done that 3 times and have not been able to actually end up going on the trip. So
I think the best is to choose weeks in places you're very likely to be traveling to. So, you fancy a trip to the Philippines anyway. There's a chance to have a week in this resort in the Philippines. Choose that prize rather than the French Polynesia week and you've got no intentions of going there. And when you look at the flights, you're like, yeah, I'm definitely not going there.
Yeah.
I mean, it depends where you live in the world, obviously. But from Europe,
example, I actually won one of those rare two-person packages to go to Papua New Guinea, and I was like, yes, because that was the first thing I listed on what I wanted to win. And then once I won it, I looked up flights, and it was like $9,000 to get there, and I was just
not that the flights were going to run on time anyway.
Yeah, so there was just no chance. Yeah. So that's one thing to keep in mind with regard to competitions too, is if you get to order your prizes, make sure you'll actually be able to go on the trip. That was a little digression. Sorry.
I was gonna dive a little bit into that kudos thing. I think what's important if you want prizes, choose your competitions based on the prizes. Actually, the less known competitions are often the best way to win prizes because if they haven't got a big reputation, you're more likely to have less competition and therefore more chance of success. If you want kudos, I think that it really only comes in a handful of competitions, particularly career-changing kudos. And I think that's, it's very important to choose carefully. It's also what often happens in underwater photography in my time in it. Big competitions come and go very quickly. What will happen is a company will decide, we want to have our own photo competition. Could be a magazine, but usually like a company. They go, we want our competition. We'll throw money at these guys for 2 or 3 years to run this competition. And then after the 2-3 years, and everyone's like, this is amazing, great prizes, really fancy. And then suddenly it'll just stop because they're like, we've done that and we're not getting any good returns now. We've had all the images and now, our social media engagement is falling off or whatever it is. We'll cut it off. And there've been so many examples of that during my time in underwater photography. And I think those competitions at the time, people think, this is great. I'm getting loads of kudos. And then they cease to exist. And telling people, I won, the X Festival of Underwater Photography when it no longer exists is, doesn't have the kudos. Everyone's like, what the hell? When I was coming through a very long running and important underwater photography competition that was really seen as the premier underwater photography competition alongside the Wildlife Photographer of the Year was the Antibes Festival in France, which was called the World Festival of Underwater Images, but in French. And that contest, sort of was the one. And I was very fortunate to win a lot of awards there in a relatively short period of time. And that competition had a tremendous history. But ultimately, the guy running it retired. And the local council, with the people who took it over, didn't have the same relationship. And the competition just kind of stopped happening. And I would never mention those achievements on my CV anymore because no one knows about that contest because, within the community, everyone's forgotten about it. Yet for the time it ran, it was, like UPY is now, it was the premier thing and everyone would very much talk about who won in the Wildlife Photographer and who won in Antibes. And they actually both ran at the same time of year as well. So it would all come out in the same period. So people would often come over to Europe for both of them. So I think that's important if you want the kudos, you need to obviously be attracted to the big competitions, but make sure you're not building up your kudos in something that's going to go extinct.
Yeah.
Just bear that in. I mean, it's hard to predict, but I think if you know a little about the world, you can figure that out. I think there's other good positives about running a competition. I think particularly if they have a gathering at a dive show, at an awards ceremony, or a well-managed online community to do with it. They're great for bringing photographers together. And certainly that's something that our big competitions, that the big wildlife competitions that I've done, the Siena competition is another one like that, where they have nice big awards ceremonies. I think those events are a fantastic chance to meet high-rolling photographers who you often don't get the chance to meet at anything else. And I feel that I know, because I've had a lot of success in the Wildlife Photographer of the Year competition. I've benefited a lot from that. And I think that's something that, it's part of the pleasure of running a competition is helping bring photographers together. and to get that opportunity to network with each other, with industry people, but also, really to have that unusual chance to meet other photographers. Because, you do meet people sometimes in the field, but very often, you don't. It's, you can go to the same places, but you're there a week apart or whatever. What else is on my big list here? I think one thing that I would say I would also have sympathy for contest organizers about is, first of all, do not underestimate the costs involved in running a competition. And I know from, doing UPY, people always think, oh, you must do really well out of UPY. And UPY takes us a huge amount of time. Literally takes 2 to 3 people's 2.5 months of work a year to do. It's really crazy amount of work to put it all together. And it's not just, the 4 days judging. It really isn't. There's so much more beyond that. I know, just doing the publicity to send the pictures to the press will involve about 1,000 emails. The UPY email account each year gets reset, and I think it's on over 2,000 already for this year. Just photographers going, oh, the entry system doesn't work. That all takes time. Everyone takes time to answer. Or it's, sponsors saying, yeah, we'd really love to give a prize. And then 2 or 3 emails backs and forwards. This is what can you give this? Blah, it's complicated. And then disseminating the prizes is another 2 or 3 emails. And it's, it builds up very, very quickly and just sucks up time. And that's before you go through the things about building websites and making yearbooks and making presentations and all those things, making prints for exhibitions, and people just think all that stuff happens by magic from the outside often because they just don't think about it. And it all takes time, costs money. I would also say that from a financial point of view, silly things like web hosting for a competition really cost a lot. And just for us at UPY, bringing our judges together, I think it cost us this year, just as I know the number, I think it was over 900 British pounds to get Toby to the judging and back. And it's just, it's kind of like, and that's our one overseas judge, and it's not that, and he chose the cheapest flight and he caught the train to get to the other part of, but it just all adds up, it's amazing how all the little things just all add up together. So, ultimately, I mean, I know for, we've done 11 UPYs, we've lost money on at least 2 of them. And that's after all the work, not that's paying the judges, but not paying for anyone's time, everyone doing it as a volunteer and still losing money after that. So, and that's the biggest of the underwater photography competitions, not the most expensive to enter, but the biggest. And if that one can struggle, it shows that all these other people are really doing it out of passion, not out of making a quick buck.
Yeah.
And I think it's also a fairly thankless task at times, because people like me and you criticize the winners. When you judge a competition, you make one photographer really happy, and however, 500, however many entered, unhappy because they didn't win. And generally, our attitude whenever we see competition results is, go on then, impress me. And if the shots don't immediately impress you, you tend to be like, oh, I'm not so sure this time around, blah, blah, blah. And I think it's that also, means that as a competition organizer, you have to have pretty thick skin and realize that, yep, you did your due diligence. You chose the winners. You looked at every picture. You definitely chose them. And this is what you felt as judges were the best that year. Yeah. And if people aren't impressed by them, well, that's it. But, you couldn't have looked any harder. You couldn't have discussed it anymore. You couldn't have done those things. But ultimately, people will still be like, oh, I've got a better one than that on my hard drive. And, so it's the way it goes. So, so all I was saying in all of this is competitions are an easy target to moan against. And we enjoy doing that as much as anyone. It's part of the fun of the community. And as a contest organizer, that's part of the deal. That, you're putting something out there. It's in the public domain. Everyone will have an opinion. No one will look at the pictures in anywhere like as much detail as the judges, yet they all get to voice their opinion. And that is the fun of it, as well as the punishment of it as a competition organizer. What's important, I think, always is if you're making people talk, engage with the photography, have an opinion, I think you've done the right thing. You've got the images out there into the public domain. You've got people talking about them. You've got people excited about diving, underwater photography, marine life, whatever those subjects are. So yeah, you take that as the pat on the back, and you don't read the critique. I mean, we know we've had crazy situations in. I'll tell you a quick story about UPY. I mean, a couple of years ago, we had a winner in UPY, and we had this professor of photography at some university in the States, who's obviously used to everyone, agreeing with everything he said. He decided that one of our pictures was so amazing, it couldn't possibly be true. And he just went around sort of every article in every newspaper after they published our results, writing to them saying, this picture should be withdrawn. It's clearly, not a real picture. And I remember he contacted Petapixel, one of the big websites, and raised this with them. And they wrote to us and said, this professor's written to us saying your picture should have been kicked out. What do you respond to this? And I wrote to Petapixel and said, I'm not prepared to send this guy the raw file. It's not my raw file. It's the photographer's raw file. But here's the raw file. And that was it. And Petapixel were like, oh, he's just an idiot. But, the fact he was a professor, he got, there's always someone on social media who's going to shout your contest down, and we'll always, defend our decisions to that degree. But we're not going to, everyone who writes to us, we're not going to send them the photographer's raw files. We've done the checks. We know that they're fine. Take our word for it or spout off what you want on social media. But yeah, it is a thankless task, but that's not going to stop us criticizing them in the future.
Well, I think that was a much more positive and less ranty episode than the last one. So hopefully you guys enjoyed both of them. And we will see you next time, as always.